Let's talk now about classes. I'm going to break this video into two parts: how to create a class, and then how to create a class that really sells. So let's look at the basics first. You can get to this page through your Teach menu and the Classes tab. It's going to list all your classes, so you can see I have a number of classes here. The important thing to notice is that some classes are similar. This is because each different age group I teach needs a different class. Okay, same thing down here. If I have a different kind of schedule for the class, I need to create a different class. And we'll talk about that more when I open up my class. I'm going to open up one of my published classes here. And it's important to see too that you can continue editing a class after it's been published. So if you try something and you realize you need to make a tweak, that's okay. So here are the basics. You need a title for your class and a summary. This part is really important because when parents are scrolling through lists of classes, these are the things they're going to be able to see without opening any other window. So if this doesn't catch their attention, they're not even going to read the rest of what you wrote. So try and pick a title that is both clear in what the content is and a little bit catchy or interesting. We don't want to see a whole list of Algebra 1s. Nobody's going to be able to process how to choose between them. So see if you can give yours an angle or a subtitle or an edge that will catch someone's attention. The summary is not a teaser that a teaser would sort of leave a cliffhanger. We don't want to leave a cliffhanger here. So this should be engaging, but it should also be very clear as to what the purpose of your course is and what students are going to be required to do in it. That's why I always put the number of sessions up in here because I think it's important for parents to process that. A lot of them don't understand what comes next, which is really important. Before we get to these boxes, the subject is important too. Parents can search by subject. So they might screen your course out if it's not listed under the correct subject. So think about where yours best fits. If it fits in more than one, you might have to make a choice here. So think about what people might be looking for. Because people who are just scrolling are going to see it no matter what. But if someone's really going to be looking for their kid to learn X, put your course there. All right, now here is the big tripping point: course type. Now, the first thing I want to make clear is here, Outschool refers to these as courses. Up above, they call them classes, which is kind of confusing, especially if you're a brick and mortar teacher. Classes on Outschool are really courses. So when you're thinking about making a course, this is a set of curriculum, right? A set of standards and activities that you're going to be able to repeat multiple times with different groups of students. So you're making the model here, and you can repeat it as many times as you'd like. We'll talk about sections later. So this is the model. So for this model, for every student who takes your class, how many times are they going to come, and what requirements are there before they join? So multi-day class is probably the most popular format and the most like what you'd see in school, right? When a child joins second grade, they're in that class for the year. There's a start and an end. That's their class. They meet multiple days. Now on Outschool, it's a little bit different. So your multi-day class could be once a week for 4 weeks. That's a multi-day class. You're meeting with the same group of students 4 times before the class ends. They all start together and end together. It's a complete experience. Other multi-day classes are a full semester of Algebra 1. Maybe they meet 3 times a week for 8 weeks. That's still a multi-day class. Some multi-day classes are referred to as camps. Those are ones that meet within 1 week or in a compressed format. Maybe they meet 4 or 5 days in the week. Those are more popular in the summer when kids are off school. They were popular for a while when the quarantining first began. So those are all multi-day courses. So if the same group of students is going to meet multiple times together with you to work on the same material, and there's a start date and an end date, that's a multi-day class. A one-time class, by contrast, is a one-time experience. It's kind of like a pop-up class. So a group of students come, they take your class, the class ends, and you don't see them again. Unless they sign up for something else with you, which would be awesome, and they might, but they don't have to. One-time classes are really popular right now just because of the way people's schedules are at home. One-time classes are easy to schedule last minute. They're easy to fit in around other activities. One-time classes are also really great for new teachers because you don't have a review and a history on Outschool yet. So even if your Algebra 1 class is amazing and you've been teaching algebra for 20 years in the public school system, you aren't on Outschool yet. So people are going to be reluctant to commit to the cost of 6 weeks of Algebra 1 with you. If you can come up with a one-time class, that's a much lower commitment in terms of finances and time, and they are much more likely to take that and give you a review that will give other consumers the confidence to purchase your 6-week series. So see if you can come up with a one-time class or maybe a multi-day class that just meets a couple of times to get yourself going on Outschool, if nothing else. Make sure it's still something that's in the wheelhouse of what you want to be teaching and doing on Outschool. You don't have to come up with some random idea just to make a one-day class, but see if you can. All right, an ongoing class sounds similar to a multi-day class, but it's a little bit different. This is a subscription class. It's kind of like a club. So you'll hear people refer to it as drop-in. I would really recommend not using that language, especially with parents, because it works more like, for those of us who lived in the 90s, you remember the postcard where you taped a penny on and then you got like 6 cassette tapes? But then if you didn't mail the form back in time, you got more cassette tapes and you had to pay for them. That's what an ongoing class is. So those of you who were not around in the 90s, that would be like these murder mystery subscription boxes or the STEAM activity subscription boxes or the little passports boxes. You get the next one in the mail unless you remember to cancel your subscription before they charge you. So that's why I would not call it drop-in. But in terms of your planning and your activities, you can think of it as drop-in. The students can enroll at any week during the course. In a multi-day course, they have to start week 1 or they've missed the boat. For an ongoing class, they could start week 4. You can have an end date to your ongoing class, or you can just keep adding dates and it can go on forever. So these can work really well for some kinds of classes. If you're having an art class, then every week there's a different drawing activity, so you don't have to start week 1. You could jump in at any week and be successful. This is a great format for that. Social clubs, hobby clubs, anything where they don't need to have attended the previous classes to be able to be fully involved, ongoing is a great format. And for families that do understand the Outschool system and understand what an ongoing class is and aren't going to end up charged without meaning to be charged, ongoing is also a great way to test out a new teacher because you're only being charged for 1 week at a time. The key is you have to remember to cancel. For new families, this has caused some confusion because just like all of us in the 90s, we didn't realize there was another bill coming. So just make sure that you're communicating clearly. They do get automatic emails from Outschool every week. On Sunday is when the charge hits, but you know how people are with emails. So just be on top of that. Flexible schedule classes aren't open to you until you've taught a live class. So I'll talk about that in a separate video because it's a different experience. The other thing that learners see right away is the image for your class. Remember that images that you can find for free on Google aren't necessarily free. They might belong to someone. So make sure you're either creating your own cover art or finding cover art on a Creative Commons website like Pixabay or Upsplash. There are lots of them where it specifically says that it's available for commercial use for free. Okay, and try and come up with your own image if you can, or search your own image because a lot of classes have very similar images and it makes it hard for yours to stand out. The course format is the additional details about your course. So you can set the age range. Age range cannot exceed 5 years. You could do it, but it's really not a great idea. Remember that learners are here to have a more intimate experience, and if you've got an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old in the same class, they might both be pretty upset with the experience. That might not always be the case. You should also be prepared for the fact that many families who homeschool do so because they have an exceptional learner. Either their learner is gifted and talented, so you might have a younger learner than you expect registering for your course, or their learner has some special needs and the flexibility of homeschooling allows them to address those better. So you might have an older child who's interested in taking your course or whose family reaches out and asks you to create a similar course for an older age group than you expected. You have the ability to communicate with these families and find out what the story is when that happens, but parents are not prohibited from registering a child outside of this age range. So use this age range to list who you think that the class is going to be most appropriate for most of the time. You can also set the class size, and remember that people are here for that intimate experience. They don't want to be on a Zoom with their 20 public school classmates. They're already getting that, or they left that for homeschooling. So make sure that your class is small enough that you can really engage with every learner. You can also set a minimum. Outschool will not automatically cancel your class if you don't reach that minimum. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not, and it's on you to communicate if you do want to. The course duration is how often you'll meet with that same set of learners. So with your one group of learners, how many times until the course is over? You can set the times per week, the number of minutes per meeting, and the number of meetings per week. If you chose a one-time class, you're not going to have all these options. Same for ongoing. For an ongoing class, there is no weeks option because you're only meeting once a week. We'll come back and talk about the course description information another time because that's a little bit different. But let's drop down here to the pricing. Outschool recommends that you set your pricing somewhere in the ballpark of $12 per hour. Now, what exactly you charge is going to vary slightly based on your background, based on what's required from you for the course. And remember as well that that's per learner. So if you have a minimum of 3 students, you're going to get triple this for the amount of time you're teaching. So keep both into account. This estimated earnings tool accounts for the Outschool fee. So at my minimum enrollment, this is what I would be earning for the course. At my maximum enrollment, this is what I'd be earning for the course. The refund policy is also really important to note. In a multi-day class, there are multiple options here. For flexible schedule and for one-time classes, you don't have an option, okay? The limited is what we'd sort of recommend that everybody use. It causes the fewest problems, and you can always deal with other situations in a one-off. So in this situation, a family would get a full refund until a week in advance, or within 24 hours of purchase if they sign up for the class less than a week in advance. They have 24 hours to fix their registration. But once your class starts, nobody is entitled to a refund. In a moderate situation, they get a full refund 1 week in advance, and then during the first week of the course, they get a 75% refund. This one is fine if you like it if you're only meeting once per week. If you meet more than once per week, then this 75% might not be a fair amount. So you might want to use limited and then just deal with this situation separately if it arises. If somebody really just finds your course not to be a good fit, you can extend them a partial refund out of the goodness of your heart as opposed to being stuck with this policy, which will happen automatically to you. The flexible refund policy will give them a prorated refund based on the number of meetings left. So that would mean that if you had a 10-session course and they came to 9 and just withdrew from the last one, then they would get a 10% refund. So again, if that's cool with you, then you can totally do that. But limited means that you get more control over what happens. Money doesn't just disappear. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind with flexible is that if you have a 10-session course and they drop out after 2 sessions, you now have an empty seat that you can't refill. So, and you've lost 80% of that pay. So just think about it as you make those choices. So those are the basic fields for creating a course. We'll come back to course description in the next video.